Hermetics. Franz Bardon, the Magician. Lesson 2. The Water Principle. Deep reading about the water principle. Also originated from Akasha. The mirror origin. Bardon opens with a quiet but devastating structural statement. Water, like fire, originated from Akasha. This is not decoration. It is the foundational anti-dualism of the entire system. Most esoteric traditions that speak of fire and water as opposites implicitly treat one as primary and the other as derivative or assign them to competing divine sources. Bardon collapses that entirely. Both elements are children of the same silence. They are not opponents. They are siblings, differentiated expressions of the same undifferentiated cause, Akasha. This means opposition in the created world does not imply conflict at the causal level. Fire and water are in tension by design, not by accident. The universe requires both, and their shared Akashic origin is the guarantee that they remain in dynamic relationship rather than mutual annihilation. This is the Hermetic resolution to every false dualism. Apparent opposites trace back to one source. For the student, you are not divided between your fire and your water. You have both because Akasha expressed both. The work is not to choose one pole, but to understand that your full range of inner states, will and receptivity, passion and stillness, expansion and contraction, are all legitimate expressions of one undivided essence. Cold and contraction. Two aspects of one property. Bardon assigns water two basic properties, cold and contraction. Identical to his treatment of fire, heat, and expansion, he gives two words for a single reality. Cold is contraction at the energetic level. Contraction is what cold looks like as a structural event. They are the same phenomenon described from inside and outside. Where fire's heat caused particles to repel and expand, water's cold causes them to attract and compress. This is attraction as the first cosmic movement inward. Notice the profound physics embedded here. In the material world, cooling actually does cause contraction. Molecules slow, lose kinetic energy, move closer together. The density of water increases as it cools, reaching maximum at 4 degrees Celsius, which Bardon himself notes elsewhere. He is pointing to a universal law visible at every scale. The cold contraction principle is how anything holds itself together. Contrast with Chinese cosmology. This is yin before it crystallizes into any specific yin phenomenon. Receptivity, inwardness, the gathering of force rather than its projection. In Kabbalah, this maps to the receptive column, the left pillar, Bina's understanding as container, the letter emium, water. Bardon is again giving a cross-system key without naming those systems. The seed of the four-pole magnet is already here. Just as fire contains its own internal polarity before meeting its opposite, water's contraction principle already contains a plus and a face. It can contract toward life or toward dissolution. Magnetic fluid. The most important translation. If the electric fluid is the most important term in the fire chapter, the magnetic fluid is its direct counterpart here, and it must be understood with the same care. Bardon is not talking about magnetic fields in the physics sense, just as he was not talking about electricity in the prior chapter. The magnetic fluid is the universal tendency of energy to move inward toward center, centripetal force in its pre-material, cosmic form. It is the attractive force of existence itself. Whatever draws things together, holds them together, gives them density, substance, form, that is the magnetic fluid in operation. This is why all liquids have the property of attraction and retention. They accumulate, they hold, they absorb. Water is the archetypal gross material demonstration of what the magnetic fluid does. The colder the water, the more it accumulates. Bardon specifies maximum receptivity at 4 degrees Celsius. He is saying, the more contracted, the more magnetically powerful the material form. The practical consequence is enormous. Every act of receiving, every act of drawing something toward you, every act of holding or containing are expressions of the magnetic fluid at work in you. Memory, empathy, absorption of knowledge, emotional depth, the retention of form in the body, all magnetic. The adept who masters the magnetic fluid masters the root of all receptivity in the cosmos. The two poles. And why water's negative pole is not rot. Bardon names the poles of water with precision. The active pole is constructive, life-giving, nourishing, sustaining. The negative pole is decomposing, fermenting, disintegrating, and dividing. And just as he declared for fire, neither pole is evil. The negative pole of water is not failure. It is necessary dissolution. Consider. Decomposition is how nutrients return to soil. The death of one organism is the feeding of 10,000. Fermentation is controlled breakdown. Wine, bread, medicine all emerge from water's disintegrating pole consciously directed. Cell division, the multiplication of life, is literally the dividing property of water applied at the biological level. Digestion is disintegration in service of assimilation. You cannot absorb what has not first been broken down. Religions and moral frameworks loaded the decomposing pole with fear and disgust because uncontrolled dissolution is frightening to a consciousness that cannot see it serving a larger cycle. But the initiate sees the full cycle. The cold, contracting, dissolving face of water is not entropy, it is the prerequisite for every new form. The deeper implication. Water as the control mechanism of form. If fire's negative pole, destruction, anger, fever, was weaponized by control structures through shame, water's negative pole was weaponized differently, through disgust. Decay, dissolution, grief, emotional depth, the dark feminine, the unconscious are all expressions of water's contracting dissolving principle. Attach revulsion to them, and you create a population that cannot process loss, cannot sit in darkness, cannot allow things to end. People who cannot decompose the old cannot make room for the new. They carry dead weight, old identities, old grudges, old forms, because the dissolving pole of their water element has been made to feel like moral failure. The initiate who can consciously work the negative pole of water becomes capable of grief without collapse, of ending without bitterness, of release without loss of self. That is psychological alchemy in its truest form. Both fire and water work in all regions. The universality of water. Bardon makes the same claim for water that he made for fire. It is active and latent everywhere, at every density of creation. Water is not in some things, it is the contraction-attraction principle operating at every level of existence. The manifestation table. Akasha, water manifests as original receptive principle/capacity to receive form. Mental, water manifests as the silence, the I receive, pure spirit's receptivity. Astral, water manifests as emotion, intuition, empathy, desire for union. Etheric, water manifests as vital magnetism, OD, odic force, chi, prana, healing fluid, pranic absorption. Physical, water manifests as cold, moisture, cohesion, magnetism, surface tension. Universal, water manifests as magnetic fluid as centripetal cosmic force. The grain of sand holds its material form through cohesion, atoms attracted to each other by electromagnetic force. That cohesion is the gross material expression of the magnetic fluid. Even solid rock contains water principle. Its hardness is contracted form. Structure and density everywhere are testimony to the water element in operation. Fire could not exist alone. Polarity as creative law. This is the most philosophically rich statement in the entire water chapter, and Bardon places it without ceremony. According to the law of creation, The fire principle could not exist alone if it did not have an opposite pole, the water principle. This is not symmetry for aesthetic reasons. This is a structural law of manifestation. Akasha, pure and undifferentiated, can produce fire, the first outward impulse. But fire without a receiving pole is expansion into nothing. It has nowhere to go, nothing to act upon, no form to create. Form requires resistance. A force requires a field to move through. The creator requires something that can be created upon. Water is not the less important element because it is reactive. Water is what makes fire's creativity possible. Without the receptive principle, the electric fluid produces nothing. Without the magnetic fluid, the electric fluid has no medium in which to create form. This is why in the Hermetic tradition the feminine receptive principle is not lesser, it is the necessary condition of all manifestation. In Kabbalah, the Sephiroth on the left pillar, Bina, Gebura, Hod, are not weaker than those on the right. Bina, understanding, is the Great Mother, the womb of form, the sea from which all manifest structure emerges. Without Bina, Chokma's wisdom remains forever unrealized. In Chinese cosmology, yang moving without yin is not creation but explosion. The Tao requires both movements. The Tao Te Ching repeatedly exalts the valley, the feminine, the empty, precisely because these are the water qualities that make sustained creation possible. For the student, your receptivity is not passivity. Your capacity to be still, to absorb, to not immediately respond are active expressions of the water element in you. The spiritual path that prizes only fire qualities, will, projection, action, has amputated half of the magician. The electromagnetic polarity. The final synthesis of this chapter. Bardon closes with the paired statement, we have to reckon everywhere with two main elements, furthermore with the electric and magnetic fluid as opposite polarities. This is the key synthesis. Fire and water are the elemental poles. Electric and magnetic fluids are the functional poles, the how through which fire and water do things in the world. The elements describe what is, the fluids describe how it moves and acts. Everywhere in creation you will find this dual polarity. In the human body, the sympathetic nervous system, fire/electric, and the parasympathetic, water/magnetic. In the heart, systole, fire, expansion, pumping outward, and diastole, water, contraction, drawing inward. In breath, inhalation, fire, expansion of the chest, and exhalation, water, contraction. In the brain, left hemisphere analytic projection versus right hemisphere receptive integration. In physics, the electromagnetic field itself, electric and magnetic components perpendicular and mutually generative. The adept who masters both the electric and magnetic fluid masters the complete operating system of creation itself. Not one or the other, but both, in their proper proportion and conscious application. The core synthesis. The deepest thing Bardon is pointing to through the water chapter. If fire is the universe's first answer to Akasha's stillness, water is the universe's first memory of that stillness. Akasha is pure potential. Fire is the first act. Water is the first return, the first curve back toward source, the first holding of what fire has created. Every act of integration, every consolidation of experience, every moment of deep knowing, not just willing, is you participating in the original creative water. This is why water is the element of the soul in Bardon's system. The soul is where experience is held, not just generated. The fire of the spirit wills. The water of the soul remembers and transforms. Together they are not opposites at war, but two poles of a single creative intelligence, which is you.